Good afternoon. Welcome to the tea table. I am so happy you've joined me today. And I thought as we approach Mother's Day, it would be very nice to have a little Mother's Day tea together. So I chose for you some of my most colorful china, a special pot with a gold top, and then these lovely creamer and sugar. And that pattern is called chintz. In England, when they smash all the flowers together, it's called chintz. Isn't that beautiful? And for my cup, I found something very special I think you will all like. And it is a very old vintage cup and saucer of Queen Elizabeth's mother and father, the one who is on the throne, and her name was also Elizabeth, and they call her the Queen Mum, and her husband George, and then the little picture at the bottom, it says Princess Elizabeth, and this is the cup. And I'll turn it around here for you to see. And it's the Queen Mum and George, and 1937 they were crowned king and queen, and they went right through World War II, and she was a tremendous mother to England, and that's why they called her the Queen Mum, because you know when the bombing started in London, she wouldn't leave. She said, no, the king won't leave. And if the king won't leave, I won't leave. And if I won't leave, the children won't leave. And she was very brave. And even Buckingham Palace was partially bombed. But she still stood on. And it's a great example of strength in time of need. So I am going to pour out a little tea, and I have chosen today Tetley combined with a lovely tea called Afternoon in Paris. And it has a little bergamot and a little vanilla, I think. It's a lovely combination. So you might want to keep your eye out for that. It is sold in America. And I am going to now, if you haven't gotten your cup yet, or your tea, you may pause the video, grab it, and come back. So I'm going to taste it. That is very nice tea. Very brisk, very well flavored. Well, for Mother's Day, I tell you what I'm wearing today is my mother's hat. This hat belonged to her. My mother was born in 1913, so if she were alive today, she would be well over 100, and she lived to be in her 90s. And you know, my mother was very special. Even when she was in her 90s, when she would answer the phone, her voice was so young, so cheerful, you would never know that she was that old. And I think we all consider with gratefulness the mothers that brought us into the world and nurtured us, cared for us, trained us, and supported us through our whole lives. And I am very grateful for my mother. She was a very loving, beautiful person, and she was very positive, very filled with faith, I would say. And she did love God with all her heart, and she trusted him. And she was able to live a life of joy because of that. Even through very hard places, we all go through hard places. I always saw my mother looking up very uplifted person. And she also would say to me, you must forgive everyone every day for everything. That was her key, to keep everything free and blessed and good. And when I think of my mother, I brought something along that maybe you think of your mother too, and it's a cookbook, and it's called Food for the Body and the Soul. Now, this is her cookbook. This was made in 1943, and she was married in 1944. This was published in Chicago, actually, by the Moody Church. And Moody is a very famous, he was a very famous preacher in the 1800s, and he established this massive church and ministry in Chicago, and that's where my mother was from. And I love this cookbook. It has the most wonderful recipes, very simple recipes that I still use. And cookbooks really connect you with the past, because whenever I use this cookbook, I'm always thinking of my mother and her friends and the people that when I was a little girl, grew up with, and all their wonderful homemade treats and treasures and wholesome, healthy, wonderful food that they prepared for their families. And within this book are some beautiful poems on family and children and motherhood. And so it's very inspiring. Almost every page has something to read and ponder. And in those days, poetry was such a part. In fact, historically, poetry has been such a part of people's lives. And it is so important because it is uplifting and it is really civilizing to a culture to have poetry. And song and music, putting poetry to words, of course, is lovely, but also just recited poetry is very nice. Well, I've had so many comments on the purses, I thought I had to bring something that would be, this was not my mother's, but could look very much like a vintage 1940s little purse. And this is authentic. And it opens like that. And inside it's lined with red satin and some lovely gloves. Because when I was young, on Mother's Day, when we went to a Mother's Day tea, everyone wore hats and everyone wore gloves, and you would have a special bag, and theoretically your purse was, now these are nice little black lace gloves. The your gloves were to match your hat, and your purse was to match your shoes. And that was kind of a law of fashion. I don't think there's any laws now in fashion. But then I found another little purse that goes back further. Now this is little reproduction vintage, but this also would be something like what my grandmother would have. And it's a lovely little beaded purse, you see? And it's lined with satin. There are some gloves in there too, little white gloves. And this is a lovely, lovely little bag. I had a little purse almost identical to this that was real silver mesh and lined with white kid. Sadly, I can't find it. I don't know what happened to it, but it had been my great aunt Susan's that I'm named after. And she actually lived in upstate New York, and she worked for a Milner, which was a hat designer, and she modeled hats. Now this is back turn of the century, Anne of Green Gables era, and they lived in Utica, New York. They had come from Scotland, And there were 3 sisters. My grandmother was Jessie, and then there was Ruth, and then there was Susan. And this purse was so special, and I don't know what happened, but this little one reminds me of it. Well, I just wanted to think about mothers today, and I love the word motherhood. You know, we hear motherhood, fatherhood, childhood. Well, you say, what does that mean? Well, it is like a mantle, because when you graduate from any academic at school, you know, you will have tassels on your hat, but then you will have around you. Now, if you are just graduating from high school, you will have like the long sash. But when you go to college, and if you go to graduate school and do a master's degree, you will get a hood, and it's called your master's hood. Then if you get a doctorate, you get a doctoral hood, and then a very special velvet hat, and all of it means something. Just like in the military, when you have a lieutenant, or you have a sergeant, or you have a major, or then you have a colonel or a general. They all, by their clothing, you can tell their rank and who they are. Well, that is the same way in education, which many of you know. But I love the different colored hoods. And I remember when my husband graduated years ago with a master's degree, I looked over and I loved the education hood, and it was baby blue velvet. It was very lovely. But then what I really love now is the theology hood, which is crimson red. And my husband has one of those, and actually I got one of those too a few years back when I did a master's in history degree. And it is red, blue, purple, and gold. And for it all means something. Well, that is what motherhood is. And more than any academic or military or graduation hood that tells who you are, I think the greatest hood in all the world for a woman that is granted by God the gift of a child is motherhood. It trumps everything, because there's nothing like it in all the world. And it is a privilege, and it is beyond a privilege. It is a calling. It is a duty. And of course, it must also, like everything else, be walked out every day in life. And with God's help, and through faith, and through trust in Him, it's joyful and it's blessed. And I just love, there's an old Norwegian proverb, and it says, whatever is loved is beautiful. And you know, I think that says everything. When a child is loved, every child that's loved is beautiful. And that is God's plan, that we also become as little children. We've talked about this before. And know that God loves us. And that's where we become beautiful, inside and out, because we receive His grace and joy. I also feel that one of the most significant things in all the world is literally allowing the beauty of life to envelop us. And what that means to me is pause, take time. There's a word in the Psalms when you read Psalms, that's in the Bible. It's a book of poetry, but they are, of course, songs also meant to be sung. And at the end of some of the verses, it will say Selah. Well, the word Selah in Hebrew means pause and think of that. And I think that's what having a cup of tea is. It is saying, I am going to pause. I am going to think about all the blessings I have, and I am going to reflect on what has worked and what I need to improve, and now plan for the next. But if we never have a pause, we can't really grow, because we just become like part of a machine, and we just are on a roll of work, work, work. But no, God's plan is take a break and take a cup of tea and share a cup of tea with others. You know, I have a little story to tell you today. I had written years ago a song, and that song was called Baby, You Are Beautiful. I can't really sing it right now because of my cast, which is going to be coming off in just another few weeks. But I would like to tell you some of the words and the story behind it. At the time I wrote it, my youngest at that time was Gabriel. He was the 5th son and the 6th child. And Gabriel is a wonderful, beautiful person. As a baby, he had the eyes that were just so big, so blue, so sparkling, and dark curls everywhere. Well, we were going on a camping trip, our family, and I thought, baby, you are so beautiful. And this song just poured out of my pen, literally. I just sketched it down in a matter of minutes. And then I forgot about it, and we went camping, and you know what that's like. And we came back, and we were gone a few days, and then I thought, that song, what happened to that song? And I thought, oh, did that get thrown out when we cleaned the car out? Because it was just on a scrap of paper. So I ran out to the garbage can. You won't believe it. It was in the bottom of the garbage can, and I rescued the song. I could never have written it again. For any of you who are composers or writers or poets, you know what I'm talking about. The inspiration comes, you write the song, and that's it. If you don't write it down, generally it's forgotten. So this is a very special song, and it goes like this. And I thought for Mother's Day it would be so appropriate. It goes like this. Beautiful covenant child, given to God from the womb, may you be mighty in spirit as a flower that comes to full bloom. And then, baby, you are beautiful. Your land is pure and white. Baby, you are beautiful. I kiss you nighty night. Softest pinks and fragrant blues, powder puffs and whisper hues, baby's breath of sweetest scent, fresh as morning dew. Baby, you are beautiful. Your land is pure and white. Baby, you are beautiful. I kiss you nighty night. Loving ears wait for your cry. Loving voice sings lullaby. Loving feet run to your call. Baby, you are all. Little fingers clasp my hand. Little toes a thrilling band. Dawny hair a velvet touch. Baby, I love you so much. Baby, you are beautiful. Your land is pure and white. Baby, you are beautiful. I kiss you nighty night. Thank you so much for coming and having tea with me today. It means so much. This has been so special. You are also beautiful. You are loved by God. Sit down today, have your tea, and allow Him to love you. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you next time.